our postmodern age of division, anger, anxiety, and confusion, the most dangerous weapon you have is your own mind.
Take control! Question everything!
This is the Intellectual Freedom Podcast.
It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Life is long enough, and a sufficiently generous amount has been given to us for the highest achievements, if it were all well invested. Seneca wrote this. He was a Stoic philosopher who died in 65 AD, but this quote from his essay on the shortness of life applies as much, if not more, to our lives today. Here's a reality check. Everyone is exhausted. Everyone feels this shortness of time. Too much day, not enough time to get things done. We run from this to that to the other all day long, all night, all the time. Especially here in the United States. We don't have to look around very far. We wear that busy badge of honor all the time. How are you doing, John? Oh, I'm just so busy, so unbelievably busy. You can't believe what work's like these days. We complain constantly that there are never enough hours in the day. We blame our jobs, we blame the economy, and I'm just going to be real. Too often and I put myself in this category, we act like helpless victims of a ticking clock. We are constantly rushed, constantly behind, and constantly waiting for the weekend. 2,000 years ago, the most powerful men in the Roman Empire were complaining about the exact same thing. So we are not unique. Human beings are as human beings have always been. And a man named Seneca looked at them and laughed. He told them the brutal truth, and that's what we're going to focus on today, the brutal truth that the universe is not cheating you. You are cheating yourself. And you might be saying, oh, but you don't know my circumstance. Right. We all have things going on in our life. But today, we're going to take on his argument, Seneca's argument, in the essay on the shortness of life, and I highly recommend you read it. Heck, you don't even need to buy this one. You can just find that essay free online, on the web, multiple sources. It's been around so long, and it's nice and short and easy. You'll read it in one sitting, one day. So we've been going through very large series. Long series. As you know, we just finished up a 10-week study of Plato and the Republic. And that was a big one, right? And so I guess I wanted to just take a step back for just 1 second and let's just call it a bridge. And I ran across this essay the other day. I read it and decided, it's worth just spending a few minutes on today. If you're not a Stoic, I do think, regardless, you're going to enjoy Seneca and this short essay. So give it a read. As I preface that, we are moving on after this podcast episode to a new topic. We are taking on the machine of postmodernism. Ever felt like life is sort of being stuck in a machine, or you feel like Keanu Reeves in The Matrix? Well, this next book by Paul Kingsnorth called Against the Machine, which is coming up next, is going to be an amazing study, I think. And It's modern. It reads super quick. It's a fun read. He's a very entertaining author to read. So go out there, go get that book. But for today, let's just pause. I always love to come back to ancient wisdom. And Seneca is one of the greatest philosophers in Western history, really. And I think the key thing is he kind of just speaks to us about life, which is crazy considering he lived so long ago. As I know, I took a lot from him, and I hope that you do too. So listen in and dissect a couple of these main points from this essay, and let's get going. Oh, by the way, I am Dr. David Hopkins. If this is your first time with us, I am a humanities professor and your host and your guide through the Intellectual Freedom Podcast. And this is hard to believe that this is episode number 150. Can't believe it myself. Actually, I'm still doing this little hobby project that I started up during the COVID shutdown, but I appreciate you coming along or joining in for the first time, and believe me, it does not go unnoticed, and I appreciate you. But enough with the fluff, let's get going. But before I get into the essay itself, I need to start with who is this guy, Seneca, that's giving us advice, and what kind of credential does this guy even have for me to even listen to him today? So Seneca was not some quiet monk sitting cross-legged on a mountain, pondering the meaning of life. He was deeply entangled in the absolute worst parts of the real world. Seneca was effectively the wealthiest investment banker in Rome. He was also a ruthless political survivor, as back in those days, if you weren't ruthless, hate to say it, you probably weren't breathing too long in politics during the Roman era, especially the period that he lived in. As to say Rome was volatile during his life would be about the deepest gross understatement of the century. And yeah, to be fair, he was sort of actually he was a massive hypocrite in many ways, because he wrote beautiful, sweeping essays on the virtues of poverty, while also owning estates the size of small countries. Most famously, though, Seneca, he was the personal tutor and advisor to the Emperor Nero. Yeah, that Nero. He tried to teach Stoic virtue to a literal psychopath. Yeah, you know Nero, that Nero, the ruthless, bloodthirsty Nero. That's who he was the tutor for. It's not probably much of a spoiler alert, but being closely tied to Nero, it did not end well for our friend Seneca. When Nero hit that intense paranoia stage, and if you've read history, Nero just progressively got worse and worse and worse. He started to feel the walls closing around him politically, and basically at the end, he ordered his old teacher to commit suicide. That was the honorable way for someone of Seneca's stature to die. And Seneca obeyed. First, he tried to slit his wrists, but he was old by then, and his circulation was so poor that, unfortunately for him, he didn't bleed out. That would just suck, thinking of that beyond comprehension. But it got even worse. So when that failed, he asked for poison. He was going to poison himself. After writhing in horrific pain for a period of time, and that also failed. That didn't kill him either. So finally, his guards took him, placed him in a scalding hot bath where he slowly suffocated from the steam. It was gruesome, painful, and a terrifying end. But right in the middle of that chaotic, high-stakes life around the year 49 AD, Seneca had wrote a letter, and he addressed it to a Roman official named Paulinus. And when you read it, you'll hear the name Paulinus. He was in charge of the city's grain supply. He was the ultimate government workaholic. He was drowning in logistics meetings, relentless stress, the type A go-getter, social, political, business climbing type, trying to make that big name for himself, rise in stature, get more money, more wealth, etc., etc. Seneca wrote on the shortness of life to snap Paulinus out of his trance. He's trying to save the man's soul before the job just killed him. And we know today, my goodness, how many people are so stressed out about job and money and obligations that literally they are killing themselves, medicating themselves, doing all kinds of things to just quote unquote keep grinding. That's the honorable thing to do in our day and age. And Seneca saw this in Paulinus, and he tries to convince him to change. So Seneca starts by exposing a fundamentally broken worldview. I don't think it's so hard for us to relate when Seneca says, quote, "We, the human race, have a twisted relationship with value," end quote. Seneca saw this absurdity perfectly. And he continues on and he says, quote, "People are frugal in guarding their personal property. But as soon as it comes to squandering time, they are most wasteful of the one thing in which it is right to be stingy," end quote. Think about your credit card. You get a text message on a Tuesday afternoon and the bank is going to alert you to a fraudulent charge. Your heart skips a beat. Someone in another state just spent $14.50 on a sandwich using your card number. And we know now that a lot of times thieves of credit cards, they want to try a little transaction, see if it works, and then go for the big one after that. But what do? You go to war, right? You drop everything. You call customer service. You sit on hold listening to terrible elevator music for 40 minutes. You dispute the charge, you cancel the card, you update your passwords, you treat the stolen $14 like a profound personal violation. You defend your property, right? You defend your property. But look at what happens later. That exact same day, after you go through all this drama in your life, you get home, sit on your couch, open a social media app, give a billionaire social media company and their dopamine draining algorithm 3 uninterrupted hours of your evening. You hand over the non-renewable resource in the universe, your time, to strangers, arguing about things that don't matter in your life. You sit in useless meetings at work for 2 hours because you don't want to offend the organizer. And well, at least you are getting quote unquote paid to sit through the agony of that boring stupidity. You let a toxic acquaintance drain your energy on the phone for an entire afternoon, complaining, about how her 4th ex-husband is getting on her final nerve and she can't understand how this, that, or the other keeps happening to her. You do not even put up a fight. You just hand over the keys to the vault of your most valuable asset, time. The one thing that is 100% irretrievable and unrecoverable. Why do we do this? Why do we do this? When I read this essay, it kind of made me stop to think about this. Because we all do it. I do it. You do it. Everyone does it. Why are we so incredibly defensive over our bank accounts and our job and giving the time for this, that, or the other, and so completely reckless with our own personal time? We, human beings, have a psychological blind spot. I think it might be because money is visible. We can open our app, see the exact number. You get things with that money. When you lose money, you feel the pain immediately. The math is right there, staring right back at you. But time's kind of invisible. It's abstract. We have this weird human propensity to think there is always going to be more of it. Even though if we really stop and think about it, and as I say this to you and you're listening, you get it, I get it, we all get it. We're going to run out of time. We're all going to die. All of us. No escape, no exceptions. But the human brain just is fundamentally wired and just terrible at valuing the abstract concept of time. We walk around carrying catastrophic illusion. We actually believe tomorrow is guaranteed. We treat time like it's some renewable resource. If you lose $100, you can work a few extra hours and make it back. You can rebuild a burned down house. You can start a new business if that fails. You can always get more stuff. But you cannot earn back a wasted Tuesday night scrolling endlessly on social media. Once that sun goes down, tonight, when you and I go to bed, that day's gone forever. And whether you used it wisely or poorly, it's gone. It's permanently deleted from your ledger. Yet we treat our days like we have an infinite supply sitting in a warehouse somewhere. We treat our time like it's cheap because we cannot physically see the balance ticking down. We think we have forever. But really, right now, think back 5 years. Where were you? Go 10. Go 20. Or even 30 if you're old like me, and some of you are. It goes by so absurdly fast, and before we know it, you and I, we will be dead. Whatever we want to accomplish will pass. How we wanted to live, gone. Hopes, dreams, ideas. Heck, just enjoying life. It's going away. And it's going away very quickly. So Seneca, he saw this 2,000 years ago. He knew that the only thing you should be greedy about is the one thing you are currently flippantly, recklessly, carelessly giving away for free. You're guarding the pennies in your bank account while you're being robbed blind of your most valuable asset. Seneca in this essay had a very specific name for people buried in their materialistic world. He called them the occupati, or the engrossed. He mocked the Roman guy who spent hours meticulously arranging his beautiful bronze statues in his house. He mocked the guy who spent half the day making sure his haircut was perfectly symmetrical. Funny thing, they did actually still care about their haircuts back in ancient Rome. Human nature never changes. But the difference is that the technology just gets faster, gets more engrossing. And let's face it, our technology today is meant to capture you, capture your money, capture your time by capturing your attention, which in turn captures more money for them. Today, we call this the attention economy. Tech companies literally hire behavioral psychologists to hijack your neurochemistry. They weaponize dopamine to keep you scrolling. Modern psychology labels our current state. They call it continuous partial attention. We're never fully focused on a conversation. Think about that. Continuous partial attention. We have this capacity to multitask across many things. You may be multitasking right now while you're listening. And I'm sure there's moments you catch a big portion of this podcast, but then there's others you were distracted doing something else. That's continuous partial attention. We're never fully focused on a conversation. We're never fully present at dinner. We're constantly scanning for the next hit of synthetic validation. Seneca's description of the average Roman citizen is today's guy optimizing his fantasy football lineup while his marriage is falling apart. The haircut guy is the influencer spending 3 hours curating a grid of photos for people they don't even know or like. We treat our minds like a landfill for cheap entertainment. We argue with bots on the internet, or we let bots infuriate us and gain our attention about a politician who does not know your name, cares nothing about you except maybe a little bit during election season, and they never will. The sad truth is that we are profoundly busy with absurd and worthless tasks, and simultaneously spending our lives on tasks and things that are completely empty. But you know what is the specific way, the perspective that can cause meaningful change? What we need to do is come to a realization that activity, doing things, does not equate to purpose and living a purpose-driven life. Let me paint a picture for you. You get to the end of the day and you collapse in bed. You're physically, mentally exhausted from everything that was going on. Your calendar was completely full. You answered 50 to 70 emails or so. You sat through 4 video calls. You ran errands. You folded clothes. You got the kids from practice. You scrolled through 200 posts on your feed in between and after. You were in a constant state of motion from the exact second your alarm went off to the time you went to bed and set it to start over again the next day. But if I asked you what you actually accomplished of value, of purpose today, if I asked you what you built, what you learned, or what you deeply connected with, you may just give me a stare. Maybe give me some words like, same old, another day, another dollar. Same shit, different day, that sort of thing. That is the trap. That's the trap that Seneca wants to warn us about. Here's a direct challenge to you to up your game in life. The profound yet simple idea that activity does not equate to purpose. Movement is not direction. Driving 90 miles an hour feels incredibly fast. The engine is roaring, the wind is hitting your face, and you feel like you're getting somewhere. But if you are driving in the absolute wrong direction, your speed does not matter. In fact, it causes more problems. You're not making progress. You're just getting lost faster. So we confuse being busy with being important. We wear our exhaustion like a badge of honor in the modern world. And when someone asks how you're doing, what is your default answer? You sigh and you say, things are great, just so busy. We say it like it proves we have value. We say it to sound important. We say it to justify our existence, which is not necessary. Because here's the dark psychological truth. We use activity as an anesthetic. We stay constantly busy because we're absolutely terrified of the silence. Think about it. If you actually stop, if you sit in a quiet room with no phone, no screen, no schedule, you have to face the heavy questions. Am I living the right life? Do my activities, do my work actually matter? Am I investing time, energy, effort in the people I love? Am I just living in the same house with them? Those questions require deep and uncomfortable reckoning. It is so much easier to just answer another email. It's so much easier to reorganize the garage, Netflix binge some random series, or argue with the stranger on the internet. We fill every quiet second of our day with cheap and frantic activity, so we never have to face the terrifying absence of a real purpose. So do not confuse the sweat of your brow with the value of your life. A hamster running on a wheel is sweating. A hamster on a wheel is running a marathon every single night, but he is still in a cage and he is getting absolutely nowhere. Audit your motion. Demand a direction, because activity without purpose is just a slow, exhausting way to die. And this brings us to the core sickness of the modern professional, the deferred life plan. You know the script. You tell yourself you will grind until you're 65, 67. You'll climb the ladder. You'll save the money. And then you will live. Then you will take the trips. Then you will read the books. A Harvard psychologist named Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar gave this a name. He called it the arrival fallacy. It is this illusion that we have that once we attain a goal, we're finally going to reach lasting happiness. We think the promotion, the house, or the retirement account is a magic key. But the neuroscience tells us a completely different story. We completely misunderstand how dopamine works. We think dopamine is the chemical of reward. It is not. Dopamine is the chemical of anticipation of the reward. It rewards the chase. It motivates you to hunt. The moment you actually get the promotion, your brain spikes, and then the dopamine spikes, and then immediately it's going to drop below your previous baseline. You are literally chemically punished for achieving your goal. I still remember very, very clearly the day I heard that I had passed my PhD dissertation defense. It was an arduous task. I was at work. I was sitting in front of a computer, and an email comes through. Congratulations. The dissertation committee has approved your work. That was it. That was the whole thing. I sat there. I stared at the computer for about half a second. I felt a surge of happiness. But then I don't know. It really wasn't much. I think I kind of felt like a dullness. Of course, I was pleased. I was satisfied. But I didn't feel smarter or ecstatic happiness. It just was what it was. And I think we can all think of those moments where we've achieved something and you do get that momentary glitchy high, but then you fall right back down. Psychologists call this the hedonic treadmill. You run as hard as you can. You get the new title. You get the bigger paycheck. Your brain adapts to the new normal in a short amount of time. And suddenly you're right back at your baseline level of anxiety, looking for the next treadmill to climb on. Let me give you 3 ways to look at this trap. Think about walking toward the horizon. You can walk toward the horizon for 10 hours. You will sweat. You're going to wear out your boots, maybe. You might cover a massive amount of ground. 10 hours is a long time, but when you stop, the horizon will be exactly the same distance away as when you started. You're walking towards a mirage, chasing things. But think about that luxury cage. You grind for 5 years to buy the luxury car. Oh, it's beautiful. Beautiful. Leather seats, the smell, the new car smell, which is plastic, by the way. You drive it off the lot. For 2 weeks, you feel like a rock star. You feel like an absolute king. But by month 3, it's just a metal box you use to sit in traffic. You bought the dream house, but you still have to wake up every morning with the exact same anxious brain. There's still a mortgage, things to fix, things you want to improve. Changing your coordinates does not change your psychology. Mountain climbers know this feeling intimately. They climb for 6 hours. You look up and they see the peak and they get this surge and they push their body to the absolute limit. They reach it. They pull themselves over the ledge, completely exhausted. And I'm sure there's a moment they look out at the gorgeous, beautiful skyline and they feel this sense of pride and accomplishment. But then my guess is after they get up there, they got to get back down and they start thinking about the next peak, the next one. That is what the modern corporate life is built on. A never-ending series of false summits. And we'll get into this next series with the machine. But this is exactly what Seneca was warning the Roman elite about. They were conquering the known world. They were hoarding gold. They were waiting for the day they could finally relax, but the treadmill never stopped. The destination was a hallucination. The only thing you can actually possess is the step you are taking right now. If you cannot find a way to live inside the process, you're never going to live at all. And Seneca drops the hammer on this exact delusion when he says, quote, "You act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals in all that you desire." You think you have forever to achieve your goals. You do not. Who told you you own tomorrow? Who guaranteed you a Tuesday in 2030? You are banking your entire existence on a future you have no control over. Seneca said, quote, putting things off is the biggest waste of life. It snatches away each day as it comes and denies us the present by promising the future. The greatest obstacle to living is expectancy, which hangs upon tomorrow and loses today. End quote. So how do you beat this clock? You stop consuming garbage and you start cultivating wisdom. When you read great literature or philosophy, you're performing a miracle. You're taking the greatest minds in human history like Seneca and annexing their time onto your own. You get to harvest their decades of suffering and learning in a single afternoon. You get to grab nuggets of gold reading The Shortness of Life by Seneca one of the most brilliant minds to live during the Roman Empire, one of the most spectacular empires to ever exist, from the tutor of an emperor. You get to take that life, learn from it, and embed it how it fits into your life. What a precious gift. What a thing we take for granted so easily, myself included. Listen to how Seneca describes this ultimate hack. Quote, "Of all people, only those are at leisure who make time for philosophy. Only they truly live. Not satisfied to merely keep good watch over their own days, they annex every age to their own." End quote. Now, when I use the word philosophy, I know exactly, and you hear Seneca say that, I know exactly what happens. Your eyes probably just rolled in the car if you're there, or no matter where you're at. Remember, I'm not in the ivory tower. I'm not an ivory tower professor, so I know what you might be thinking. You picture some snobby old professor in a dusty college lecture hall arguing about words that do not matter when you think of philosophy. Throw that image entirely to the trash. Seneca was not talking about getting a degree. He was not talking about writing research essays. He was talking about living an examined life. He was talking about waking up. Look at the average modern day. You wake up, you check the feed, you go to work, you sit in traffic, you go home, you stare at a glowing rectangle until your eyes hurt, then you fall and get tired, and then you decide to stumble to bed. You do it all again the next day. You're on autopilot. You are a passenger in your own body. To make time for philosophy just means you grab the steering wheel of your mind. You stop reacting to your world and your environment, and you start examining it. And how do you do this? How do you annex time and go to the next level without becoming an academic, which you don't have to do? First, you have to face the silence. You have to carve out 10 minutes a day where you do absolutely nothing. No phone, no email, no background noise, just you and your mind in a quiet room. You have to ask yourself the brutal questions. Why am I working at this specific job? I hope you have a very fulfilling job. It brings you joy, comfort, you help people. If you're not, and you're saying it pays the bills, if you want to be honest with yourself, you need to start questioning that. Another one, why am I spending money on things I do not care about? You buying things to impress people. You using that expenditure of money as an anesthetic. What is it? Is the ladder I'm climbing actually leaning against the right wall? Here we're back to that purpose-driven decision making. And what do I want to accomplish? What do you want to be known for in the end? If you could do anything with your time, and if you don't know what you would do if you could do anything with your time, then you need to ask, what is it that I want to get done in my life? Explore it, question it, analyze it, try things, side hustle things. Heck, take the first step to make a change. You don't have to run off to a monastery in Italy. But you do need to start thinking about what would your life well lived look like. Most people will just not do this. Most are going to be satisfied with comfortable. They would rather be miserably busy than quietly honest, or stay in that soft, cushy world of safe. Safe is nice. Safe is warm. Safe is easy. Nobody will ever make you change. That's a guarantee. If you don't do it, there is nobody going to rescue you. It's an internal, it's a mental thing. And second, you have to read good books. Quality books, old books. I know I sound like a broken record, But hey, I unapologetically won't change that. If you've listened to this podcast for any length of time, the smartest, most successful, most wise humans on the planet, they read, and they read a lot, bar none. You can't escape it. This is what Seneca means by annexing every age to your own. This is the ultimate cheat code to human existence. You are going to face heartbreak. You are going to face professional failure. You are going to face the death of people you love. You are going to face political, economic upheaval and turmoil. You are going to face stress, anxiety, fear, physical ailments, embarrassment. That is life. There are no exceptions to that rule. You can try to figure out how to survive all of that all by yourself. I mean, give it a shot. Most people think they're smart enough to figure it out. Or you can sit down with a book and borrow the brain of some of the most sophisticated intellectual minds that have ever walked the planet, that have been through way more stuff than you could even dream of. See, when you read deeply, lasting wisdom emerges. You're literally stealing time. You do not have to make every catastrophic mistake yourself. You can harvest a lifetime of someone else's suffering and learning in a single Sunday afternoon. You get to live 1,000 lives instead of just one. You do not need to call yourself a philosopher to do this. You just need to be awake, alert, and disciplined. See, the machine, it wants you distracted. The algorithm wants you reacting. It wants you hyper-focused on the outrage of the hour, so you never actually look up at the horizon. Living and examine life is an act of rebellion. It is the absolute refusal to sleepwalk into your own grave, and sadly, millions, hundreds of millions do this. So, audit your days, borrow the wisdom of the dead, claim your mind. I think that to put a modern spin with my own intellectual license is really what Seneca was talking about in the Shortness of Life. Audit your days, borrow the wisdom from the dead, and claim your own mind. So let's go to work. Let's stop acting like our time is cheap, because it isn't. Our lives are long enough if we actually know how to use it.